Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Podcast. This podcast exists to add value to leaders who multiply value to others. I'm Mark Cole, and on this week's episode, John Maxwell is talking about how you can attract leaders to your team. Now, I've got to be honest with you, after 25 years, I've watched John and hopefully myself begin to attract a greater, competent, more effective leader year over year, recruit after recruit, teammate after teammate. How? It's by the lessons and by the points that John tells you and shares with you in this lesson. Now, after he shares this lesson, I will be back to help you apply what you've learned, and we will improve and up-level your life and your leadership. If you would like to download today's free bonus resource for this episode, or if you'd like to watch us on YouTube, go to maxwellpodcast.com/attract leaders. Here we go. Here is John Maxwell.
Today's lesson is how do I attract leaders to my organization? Well, it's a great question, and I'm going to, in this session, answer it for you. So let's get started. Number one, if you want to attract people to your team, you need to love what you do. Often I say you need to love what you do, and you need to be doing what you love. Now, when I'm talking about loving what you do, now I'm talking to you about your passion. And what's beautiful about passion is it truly is the great energizer. In other words, passion gives you energy. If you know a person that's passionate about what they're doing, they have a lot of energy. People with passion have energy. People without passion, honestly, they lack energy. So when a person loves what they do and they do what they love, they're filled with passion, which not only gives them energy, but it also makes them attractive to other people. Let me explain. When you see a person that really loves what they're doing, you're just attracted to them. You may not even know what they do, but there's something magnetic about a person that enjoys life, enjoys people, enjoys making a difference, and pretty soon you find yourself literally being drawn to them. You know, and I still work hard and love what I do, and I still travel the world, and I still write, and I still speak, and hey, and I mentor you, and I love it, everything about it. I don't want to retire. I'm not thinking about stopping. All I'm thinking about is what can I do today to add value to you? In fact, when I got up this morning and I thought about my time with you today, I thought, oh, good. I get to add value to you. I get to make a difference in your life. I get to be a positive difference in your life. So if you want to attract people to you, leaders especially, you have to be passionate in what you do. That's what makes you contagious. It's what makes them want to do and be what you do and who you are. Number two, you want to be successful. Why? Because success attracts people. Success is what gives you the credibility of being a leader. So let's say, for example, I was putting together a sports team, okay? And I was successful myself in soccer or football, however, whatever you would call that in your culture. If I was successful, you'd be drawn to be on my team because you'd say, because John is successful as an athlete, I can be successful also. There's something about success attracts people. So if I want to do well in leadership, what am I going to do? I'm going to find somebody that's done well in leadership. If I want to do well in relationships, what am I going to do? I'm going to find somebody that really knows how to get along with people. So there is a credibility that you get as a leader when you're successful because people want to follow successful people. And there's an attraction. Leaders like to be attracted with other leaders. I often illustrate it this way. Let's say from a 1 to a 10, 1 being low, 10 being top. Let's say I'm an average leader. I'm a 5. Now, what does that mean? That means that I will attract people that are 5s, 4s, and 3s, 2s, and 1s. Because the law of magnetism and the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership says who you are is who you attract. So if you're a good leader, guess who you attract? You attract good leaders. So if you're a 5 average, you attract 5s and 4s and 3s. But if we can teach you how to lead and we can get you up to a 7 or an 8, if you're an 8, what do you attract some 8s? You see, the better leader you are, the better people you attract. The higher you go, the more you attract people that have already gone high. The more successful you are, the more that you attract successful people. This is huge. People want to be on a winning team. They want to be with somebody that's successful. So when you're successful, you begin to bring around and attract to yourself really successful people. Number 3, take action. This is what I call action attraction. In other words, there's something about when somebody is moving forward that it's that movement that people say, oh, she's going somewhere. He's going somewhere. Where are they going? I wonder if I could go with them. I wonder if I could join their team. You see, what leaders do is they not only know the way, they show the way. In other words, they basically look at the people around them and say, I'm going to climb this mountain. Do you want to climb this mountain with me? I'm going to go to the top. Do you want to go to the top? And it's that action that really makes the difference in people's lives. Again, nobody ever joined a person that just had good intentions. They only join somebody that has good actions. So the moment you start taking action on a situation, you begin to attract those people to you. Now, what are we doing? We're talking about how do you attract leaders to your organization. Number 1, love what you do. That gives you passion. Number 2, be successful. That draws the best people to you. Number 3, take action. Now, all of a sudden, you're creating movement. Number 4, have a big vision. You see, the size of the vision that you have determines the size of the person that you attract. If you have a small vision, you attract small people. If you have an average vision, you attract average people. If you have a big vision, you attract big people. I know this because for 50 plus years I've been leading. And finally, if you really want to attract great leaders to your organization, you need to lift your leadership lid. And what I mean by that is very simple. You need to become a better leader. The reason I teach leadership around the world and have for so many years is because when I was in my 20s, I became totally convinced that everything rises and falls on leadership. I was so convinced of it, I said, that's my calling. Here's the good news. 50 years later, I am more convinced of that truth than I was when I started. It's a beautiful thing to give your life to something that you know to be true. 50 years later, I am telling you again as your friend, everything rises and falls on leadership. So if you become a better leader, if you have a bigger vision, if you take action, if you yourself are successful, and if you love what you do, guess what? You'll attract a lot of good leaders to your organization. And that's what I want for you.
Hey, podcast listeners. Many of you listening right now would probably love the autonomy that comes with owning your own business or becoming a coach that helps other businesses succeed. Well, we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business, earning income on your own terms, and have access to the people, tools, and resources you need to build a thriving leadership development business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership Certified team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. You'll also get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. So glad you're here. I'm super excited today. So let me just take a moment and then we're going to jump right into John's content. I'm really excited today because we're doing a new format. In fact, out of hundreds of episodes, today I'm doing something I've never done. I'm coming to you without a co-host. Now, here's what's going to be interesting. I want your feedback. Does this work? Do you certain things you like about the host? We really value your feedback. We don't say this often. In fact, we should say it more. But if this podcast matters to you, if it impacts you, please, wherever you listen to this podcast, wherever you stream it, give us a rating that will help us continue to improve our rating so we can help more people. We add value so we can multiply value. The second thing I want to challenge you is I really do want your feedback. So often we read feedbacks and it's almost like we have feedback from our family. It's always fans. But we want to hear your feedback as well that will make us better. We want to hear your questions. If there's a question you have about today's episode or an episode that you've heard or just leadership in general, I want to challenge you. Get those questions to us and we will weave these in, I promise you. Now, one more thing before I go and jump into John's content today solo. Let me tell you about Diana. Diana listens to this podcast every single week with her team at Turning Point. I know this because I was at a parent night out with my wife. We were dropping our grandchildren off, and Diana came up to me and she says, Mark, I just got to connect with you a minute. I've got to tell you, the podcast makes a difference for me. It makes a difference for our entire team as we gather around at Turning Point and we began to dig in. But she got even more specific. It wasn't just like a compliment. She said, Mark, in December, you talked about on an episode getting it right more than being right. And she says, you'll never know how that episode impacted me personally and impacted our team at Turning Point. Diane, I've got to tell you, I told you I was going to mention you, but I got to tell you that moment of the night was almost as good as getting rid of my grandkids so I could have a date with my wife. Notice, Diane, I said almost. It's a pretty special thing when you can drop off some grandkids and get to spend time with a loved one. But Diana, truly what we do and why we do is because of what you and your Turning Point team does with this content. So thank you. And again, to all of you, whether you listen in, you've got a critique that'll make us better, or whether like Diana, you have something specific that helps you, we want to hear about it. Today, we are talking about a subject that John Maxwell has really mastered. And I believe after 25 years and 15 years of those being CEO, I have a thing or two to say about attracting leaders as well. In fact, I'll close today talking about two leaders that's in the studio with me, Wade and Jake. They're people that they hear John and I to the point of nausea. They produce us. They make it sound better. They don't just have to listen to it once live here. They have to go clean up the uhs and the ums and the mess ups that you'll never hear about. At least I hope Jake never releases a blooper reel because I would be in trouble. But I want to talk to you about attracting leaders. And it's so funny because as John talked about today in the lesson about attracting leaders, what did he start with? You got to be attractive yourself. In other words, what John said, he says, you got to love what you do. And John's key point here is he emphasizes the importance of loving what you do because passion energizes you and makes you naturally attractive to others. See, when you exude passion, it's like a magnet. They're drawn to you. I'll never forget. This will indelibly be placed in my mind forever. I'll never forget Kevin, the trash man. I know some of you that's listening to the podcast, you've heard me talk about Kevin before, but I've said it often. John said it today. When someone does what they're doing with excellence, there's something about that excellence that attracts you. That's true for me and Kevin. When Macy, my youngest daughter, she's now in college, when she was in grade school, every time I was home, I would take her to school. I travel a lot, and it was just my moment to get to take her to school. And every Tuesday, taking her to school, inevitably, I would get behind the trash truck. In other words, the trash truck on Thompson Mill Road, for those of you that are in Beaufort, Georgia, you know Thompson Mill Road, the trash truck schedule was Tuesday. And I did like many of you, the first time you get behind a school bus or you get behind the trash truck or you get behind some slow-moving vehicle, I rolled my eyes, got frustrated, probably checked my text. I don't know what all I did back then, but I know it was not a good experience. First time, I was kind of frustrated. The second time, I was exasperated. The third time, I was ready to change the schedule of school, change the schedule of trash pickup, change something. And it was that third week that I went, man, that trash guy's acting like he's having a good time. Now, I'd seen him before, but I was like, okay, anybody can be happy one week. Maybe he got a bonus. I don't know. Maybe he's right before vacation. But the second week, I was like, man, why am I so exasperated? This trash guy, he's having a great time. It was the third week where I went, okay, one time's nice, two times impressive, three times a charm. I'm going to watch this guy. And I began to watch Kevin. He would juke and jive and he would run across the table. He'd hold up his hands. He'd wave at everybody. And before I knew it, Kevin began to attract me to trash collecting. Before I knew it, I was kind of looking forward to catching Kevin. For 2 solid years, anytime I was in town on a Tuesday, I was profoundly impacted by Kevin. Was it because of Kevin's job? No, really wasn't. Was it because of Kevin's nuisance to me and being in the way of where I want to go? No. What it was his passion at what he was doing. It was about 3 months into this that I just went, okay, Macy, you can be late. I'm going to find out Kevin's story. And I pulled over behind Kevin and I did what I saw literally dozens of people do. When traffic had to be stopped and Kevin needed to get across because he was rolling the trash container over the truck, I watched people physically, I did it too, would get out of their car and hold up traffic for Kevin so Kevin could run the trash collector back to the truck. I became a part of Kevin's team. I became a trash collector that worked for Kevin. I'd stop the cars, I'd help him. One time he had just a bunch of trash with cardboard boxes and all this kind of stuff. I literally got out of my car, put my flashers on in the middle of the road and went over and helped Kevin put it in the trash collector. So in one of those days, I said, Kevin, you got to tell me something, bud. I've never seen somebody have so much passion about collecting trash. Kevin said, oh, it's easy. I'm making my dad proud. I said, you're making your dad proud by being a trash collector? He said, no, I'm making my dad proud because my dad always told me anything worth doing is worth doing with passion. See, my dad, he dug ditches and he sweated. It was tough on him. And I'll never forget the day where I told my dad I got a trash collector. He says, you ride a truck around the entire city? You get to see different people. He said, Kevin, he said, I never got to see anybody. It was the same people on the same job site digging deals. And he said, I'm just going to tell you, you will make it by how you make it, not by if you've made it. And I said, Kevin, you got to break that down for me. He said, Mark, he told me that you will make something, you will have made it. When you make what you're doing, you make something of it. I'll never forget that story by Kevin. But what Kevin was really teaching me is the same thing that John's teaching us today. When you love what you do, you attract people. Not to what you do, but to how you do it. See, what John's really challenged us here, and in each of the points today in my one-on-one time with you as the only host, I'm going to try to give you an application element and an application question to each of John's 5 points today. And the first application element I want to give you is a self-assessment. Can I ask you a question? Do you truly love what you do? Does it depend on how many zeros behind your paycheck or what your job responsibility or people's perception to your job? Is that what determines your love for what you do? Or do you truly deep down have a passion to do what you're doing with excellence? If not, here's my second question for you. What steps can you make today to align your daily activities with your passions? I've got to be honest with you right here. I've already told you a story that took too much of my time, but I had to tell Kevin. I had to talk about Kevin there. But I got to tell you something for me. It's a personal story. I haven't always loved what I do, even in Maxwell's organization. There's been moments that I was not excited about what my daily routine looked like in my job. But I can tell you, I discovered at every level, even the good ones and the bad ones, the good assignments, the bad assignments, I discovered at every level, it wasn't dependent on what I do that made me contagious. It was always how I did it. So today, do you love what you do? And even if you have to say, no, I don't, I really don't, Mark. I've got a worse job than Kevin's. You can still look for ways, find ways to inject what you love into what you do. Now, I want to ask you a couple of application questions. Got a couple of questions I want to ask you here today. Number one, how does your passion currently influence your energy levels and those around you? Are you the reason somebody had a bad day today? That's what I'm really asking you. Was it your passion level that took the meeting down? Second question I would ask you is, what can you do this week to focus more on the aspects of your job that you love? The second thing that John talks about today is be successful. Not only love what you do, but be successful. See, success is attractive. John taught us this. Your achievements provide credibility and naturally draw successful people towards you. I know, for me, I began early in my life, I began to have people say, you work for John Maxwell? What's it like to work for John? See, what really people were not really interested in my telesales role. They didn't want to say, now, how did you dial that phone? Did you pause between each number? Did you do it with flair? No, they didn't ask me questions like that. They went, what's it like to work alongside John Maxwell? See, people saw me successful not because of what I did, but because of who I hung out with. They saw my success because of someone I worked alongside success. It was John's track record of leading successful ventures that made me confident in his guidance. It motivated me to strive for similar success. It was 3 years in, gang. It was 3 years in. I'm on John's team, and they challenged me to go do a year-end review, to set goals for the next year. I did. They were small the first year. The second year, they were a little bigger. But by the third year, when I had one in year one in year two, been stretched in my vision by those around me in years 1 and 2, my goal setting got serious. I'll never forget, I was 33. I'd been working with John for 3 years. And I sat down and set goals for myself for the next 12 years. The first year I tried this, I couldn't even set a goal by the end of the next month. Now, all of a sudden, I've got the vision to see what success would look like 12 years from now. It wasn't by accident. That didn't just accidentally happen. That happened because of the intentionality of surrounding myself with people that think big, that are successful, and it began to challenge me to see myself as successful. So let me give you an application element. Number one, what are you doing with goal setting? Will you set some goals today? Set something tangible and achievable that reflects your aspirations in your career and in your personal life. Maybe it's to get more peace in your home life. Maybe it's tension at home. Can you set a goal today of bringing a positive, successful energy even into your personal relationships? Number 2 is about continuous improvement. Engage in continual learning to improve your skills and knowledge. When's the last time you've learned something for the first time? Well, if I were to sit down and have dinner with you today, and by the way, Diana, you and the people at Turning Point, I'd like to come have lunch with you sometime. But here's my question for you. If I sit down with you today and I said, hey, what are you learning right now? Would you know? Because see, for you to be successful, you have got to engage in continual learning to improve your skills and knowledge. So here's a question. What are some small yet significant goals you can do to start your journey toward greater success? Have a vision of success. Don't wake up one day and go, wow, I think I'm successful, but I don't really know why. Know what success looks like for you And as you do that, set some small tangible goals. Question number two, how can you leverage your past successes to attract other successful individuals? I mentioned this a moment ago, but much of my success today, but certainly early on, had very little to do with me. It was all who I was associated with. Who are you associated with that's going to lift your successful thinking and improve your perception of success? The third point John talked about today was take action. Oh, here it is. You got to do something, gang. When are you going to stop listening to this podcast and go get it done? No, I'm just kidding. Keep listening to the podcast. I'm not trying to run you away, but I am not trying to entertain you with information. I'm trying to activate you with information. I'm not trying to get a lifelong listener. I'm trying to get a lifelong doer. What am I saying? I really want you to take action. John calls this action attraction. People are drawn to leaders who are doers and who visibly move toward their goals. Not talk about it, but you can actually see tangible results. I love the fact, John is one of the quintessential action-oriented people I've ever been around. He's constantly doing it. He says, when asked the question, John, how did you get so disciplined in action? How did you learn how to act? He takes it back to an exercise that I want to share with you today. He says early on in his life, he was struck by somebody, I can't even remember who it is now, was struck by somebody that challenged him to repeat for 30 days, 25 times in the morning, 25 times in the evening, 50 times, do it now. 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 He'd wake up every morning for 30 days, say, do it now, do it now, do it now, do it now, do it now. He'd go to bed every single night, 25 times, do it now, do it now, do it now. Did that for 30 times. For 30 days, he did that. And he said something happened with him in the middle of that was revolutionary. He said the idea of do it now just completely stopped saying do it now and just do it. It wasn't about a time frame standpoint. It was about if it's on your mind, if it needs to get done, get a plan to get it done right now. And I watched John relentless in his pursuit of momentum. I've watched him move from the idea to an action quicker than anyone I've ever seen. I've seen intensity that he shows, giving us the importance of being proactive. This is not accidental. It's because he determined sometimes some podcast, some digital content, reading content somewhere down the road, he decided I'm going to apply putting action into my life. So here's my question to you. Will you create an action plan today? In other words, create a roadmap that aligns your next steps towards your goals. Don't just take a step, but get it aligned with where you're going. Also, develop a proactive mindset. Shift your mindset to focus on taking initiative rather than waiting for the last or the right moment. You don't have to wait. Begin to act. Here's 2 questions to ask you about taking action. Number 1, what immediate actions can you take today to demonstrate your commitment to your goals? See, I every year I set goal after goal after goal for the life I want to live in that upcoming year. I do it every year. But that's not really what I'm asking you to do today, is set goals. I'm asking you to put down a quantifiable action that'll point you in the direction of your goals. The second question I would ask you is, how can you create an environment that encourages and rewards proactive behavior? Maybe you need to put a golf outing with yourself on your calendar when you accomplish X. I know in our 56,000 coaches that we have in 169 countries, one of the greatest things I challenge them is, what are you going to do today to become successful tomorrow? In other words, create an environment that encourages and rewards proactive behavior. The fourth thing that John shares with us today is to have a big vision. How to have a big vision. Have I told you lately that John envisions us transforming countries? We have 28 presidents, prime ministers that have invited us to come in and transform their country. See, John has no lack of vision, but the size of a vision determines the caliber of people you attract in your life. Bigger visions pull in larger than life individuals. John and I, we have a statement that we say literally all the time now. There's not a week now that doesn't go by that John goes, how did we attract that person into our world? Well, after this lesson, I've got a good answer for John. It's because he has a big vision. He has attracted people that are bigger than life because they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Isn't it interesting? We look at somebody, we put them on a pedestal and say, well, they're bigger than life. They must need nothing. And yet it's those kind of people that are challenged to do something bigger because they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. John, recently, he just developed his big bucket list. It's 10 things that he wants to happen in his lifespan. I'm talking about things like he wants our organization to impact, not influence, impact 10 million people a month. Now, impact for us means life change, means transformation. John has challenged myself, our team, to find a model, to find a way to demonstrate impact 10 million times a month. We're on a quest. Why? Because John has big bucket list that challenges us to stretch. So how can you apply it today? Number one is your vision. Do some vision development for yourself. Spend time refining and expanding your vision to ensure it's inspiring, that it's compelling, that it wakes you up and it wakes up the others around you. Number two, speaking of around you, do some vision sharing. Communicate your vision clearly, passionately to the people around you in your life. My question for you in having a big vision is, does your current vision challenge and excite you? Does it challenge others? Or is it ho-hum? Is it mundane? Is it the same as yesterday? You need a vision that will inspire you. Number two, how can you effectively communicate your big vision so that you can attract like-minded leaders? Start challenging yourself. Practice challenging those around you with a big vision. Now I'm almost out of time, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't missed a co-host at all. I might just fire them all. I'm just having such a good time with you guys, and I'm just kidding. I love the co-host. Do give us feedback from today, but I just got a couple of more minutes with you, but I want to close with this lift your leadership lid point that John talked about. What John's really saying here is you need to improve your leadership abilities, and this will raise the quality of leaders you can attract to your team. John said it many times, everything rises and falls on leadership. I mentioned Jake and Wade at the beginning of this segment of the podcast. I try to never forget to do what I did this afternoon when we started recording. I try to remind them that they're not just behind the cameras turning knobs, making sure the sound is right, making sure that we're all prepped for it. They're really a vehicle, a conduit that's impacting hundreds of thousands of lives, hundreds of thousands of leaders every single week. You see, what I'm trying to do there is to show that when we can think bigger, we do bigger. It's not the mundane of the task, going back to my friend Kevin, the trash collector. It's not the mundane of keeping my streets clean, keeping my houses empty of trash. That young man brought joy to me every time I watched him. That man brought conduit of mindset and motivation every time I met with him. What are you doing to lift your leadership lid? And you say, Mark, I have no leadership lid. Nobody's looking at me. Nobody's following me. I am not a leader. And I would challenge you and say, you got to change that mindset. The first lid you've got to take off of you is that you're not leading. The first thing you've got to pull off of you is a mindset that you're only influencing in the context of your position or the context of your circle. We've got to lift our lid. What am I trying to do with Jake and Wade every single time we get in here is to go, hey guys, don't see this as just running a board, shifting some things, making the cameras work. See this through the lens of that camera to you, podcast family. To you. You listen to Mark, you know John Maxwell. But do you know this is not possible without other leaders that have lifted their lid? What lid do you need to lift so that you can be more effective? One application element is your self-improvement. Invest in personal and professional development programs. Do you know why I hold up a book almost every time? By the way, if you're not watching on YouTube, you're missing it, because I'm holding up a book right now and you're having to wait for me to tell you what book it is if you're not watching, because you're not watching. You're not investing in the visual part of this podcast. You're just listening. You're working out. You're driving down the road. I don't know what you're doing, but I'm holding up a book that will change your life right now, and you have no idea. Until now, because I'm going to tell you. I'm holding up the book High Road Leadership. You know why I do that? And I'm going to tell you in just a moment of how to get a digital product around this. You know why I do that? It's not so that we can make a sale and drive our bottom line. It's because I believe this will change your life. High Road Leadership will impact you. That's what I'm doing, my part. But will you invest in your personal and professional development program? If you want to lift your lid, you will. Now, real quickly, let me tell you, since I've been talking about it, we have a digital product called High Road Leadership. This podcast episode gives it to you for $199. Most of the time, it's $299. Go to the show notes, say, I am going to lift my leadership lid, and use the key code podcast, and we'll give it to you for that discount. The second application point that I would give you is mentorship. Seek feedback and mentorship from experienced leaders to uncover areas in your life and in your leadership that needs improvement. So here's the question. In what areas of your leadership do you believe you need the most improvement? Have you asked yourself that question? If you don't know, if you've not assessed where you are, how can you know where you need to focus? Question number 2 is, who can you turn to in mentorship, or who can you turn to for mentorship, or someone that will guide you to lift your leadership lid? Hey, thanks for joining us today. Looking here at what John shared, I agree. Passion is the great energizer. Success doesn't repel people, it attracts people. It gives you credibility as a leader. Hey, Scott, you're a podcast listener. I appreciate you listening. He listened to the podcast, What All Leaders Have in Common. What all leaders have in common. In fact, we'll put that podcast in our show notes as well. Scott said, this is great stuff. Thank you for sharing your insights and experiential knowledge and wisdom alongside Maxwell's. Thank you, team, for leading by example. Scott, we do all this so that you can go and be the best version, to be successful like we've talked about today. Thanks for joining us. Give us a comment. Go let us know how we're doing. Give us a question. We'll do our best to answer it. Hey, go make a difference, because everyone deserves to be led well.
Are you ready to elevate your leadership to new heights? Join the movement towards High Road Leadership with John C. Maxwell's latest book. In High Road Leadership, John explores the power of valuing all people, doing the right things for the right reasons, and placing others above personal agendas. Learn how to inspire positive change and bring people together in a world that divides. Order now and receive exclusive bonuses, including a keynote on High Road Leadership by John Maxwell himself, and a sneak peek into 3 impactful chapters. Take the first step towards becoming a high road leader. Visit highroadleadershipbook.com to order your copy today.